Computer-generated chess problem 2712 by the computationally creative computer program Chessatica. Okay, now in this study, white has a rook, knight and 2 pawns against black's rook, 2 knights and pawn. So black is slightly ahead in material. The pawn on f2 is being double attacked by both knights, whereas the pawn on e7 is in a position to be captured by the rook. So what if white does the obvious thing, rook to a7, guarding that pawn? Well, the knight, or at least one of them, will capture the f2 pawn, and then after maybe knight to e3, we have knight to f6, guarding the d5 square, which white was hoping to occupy with the knight, maybe. Knight to g2, change of plan, perhaps hoping to fork the king and rook on f4, so black doesn't allow that. King to g5, king to c1, rook to e5, protecting against any checks by the rook, king to d2, h5, and black looks to be on his way to winning this game. It's going to be difficult to stop that h-file pawn, and black is actually a full knight ahead in material at this point. It could still be a draw if white plays well, doesn't make any serious mistakes, but if black plays well, white will probably lose. So if not rook to a7, then maybe knight to e3. Now, well, then knight to f6, double protecting the e8 promotion square and freeing the rook in a sense to do more. Well, f3 can't be played because then the rook will capture the knight, so maybe knight to f5. So black loses this pawn anyway, knight captures pawn, knight to h4 check, king to f7, maybe king to c3, bringing the king into the action, rook to e4, threatening the knight, rook to f5, pinning one knight and attacking the other, knight on the second rank to g4, defending the knight, or double defending it rather, rook to f1, and the other pawn falls with rook captures e7. So again, black is leading here, and by a knight and pawn this time, so it doesn't look good for white. Yet, there's actually a way to win in this position. And this was composed by a computer program all on its own, by the way. Let's see the solution. So the analysis tells us that this is either drawn or lost for white, save for one move, rook to a6. Now some of you might be scratching your heads. What is white trying to do here? Is he giving up a free rook? In a sense, because after promotion to queen check, king to f5, defending the knight, queen to e5 check, king to g6, queen captures knight with check, king to f6, queen to f3 check, forking the king and knight, king to e7, queen to b7, forks the king and rook, king to e6, loses to queen captures knight with check, and black is clearly losing here. So capturing the rook is not an option. Maybe there's something else black can do. What about king to f7? Well, then rook captures rook, and if king captures rook, the pawn can promote. Okay, what about knight on the h-file to g5? Well, pawn promotes to queen. The rook is now pinned against its king. So king to f6, queen to f8 check, knight to f7, rook captures rook check, king captures rook, queen to e8 check, king to f6, queen captures knight, and black is lost as well. Even this move, knight to f6, right? Now here, if white promotes to a queen, this would be a mistake because rook captures queen. The rook is no longer pinned. So white captures this rook, gains a significant amount of material, king to f7, rook to e3, defending the pawn still and attacking the knight on h3, knight to f4, knight to d6 check, white has really made a comeback, king to g8, rook to g3 check, king to h7, the king comes into play, knight to g6, rook to f3, no hurry in promoting the pawn. Black decides to sacrifice the knight to stop this pawn, rook captures f6, and white is ahead by a full rook. So if you look back at this original position, it looks like one of those endgames that white might be losing on time, and where the key move is this brilliant rook to a6 that white could so easily have overlooked, because there is some analysis to be done before making a move like that. In any case, I hope you were able to see it, and even more than that, I hope you enjoyed the solution. Until next time.
Chessthetica's Book of Chess Constructs, Volumes 1 through 5. Available on Amazon.